Hello and welcome. My name is Mary Reinhart, and I'm the president and CEO of First Makerspace. And today we're going to be talking about creating a culture of safety in a makerspace. Safety is often one of the most important concepts we talk about when we're talking with schools, after school programs, and community organizations about creating a makerspace, innovation space, or STEM lab or STEAM lab in their school because safety is important to ensuring the welfare of all students. I'm approaching safety as both an educator and someone who's worked with schools to develop safe education spaces. My experience in safety really stems as a lab teacher. I was a family and consumer sciences teacher before coming to First Makerspace. And so I ran nutrition and wellness and culinary labs. And so safety was at the forefront of how I was taught to be a classroom teacher. And so when we talk about safety in a makerspace, a lot of the principles will apply. And so we're going to talk about three real general guidelines to creating a safer makerspace. The first one is to understand the risks and precautions. The second is to understand safety as a community. And really, that goes back to creating a safe community. And the second is to use visuals to communicate your message. So the first topic is to understand the risks and precautions. So we're going to dive into this one through some visuals here. So take a look at this picture, and if you are a type A personality like myself, you're thinking, oh my gosh, they need to get organized. This is not an ideal space for students. And this space itself is actually a German hackerspace, not to discredit our German friends, but this space would not be an ideal space for students to work in. And so I want you to take a moment to pause and think what items in the picture seem dangerous. Pause the screen if you need to and create a small list on a post-it note or scrap of paper. Try to list 4 or 5 items that seem dangerous, that are things that you would not want in a lab space for young students. Okay, I'm going to dive in and show you some of the things that I've identified. The first thing I noticed was that there were cords everywhere. In a hackerspace or makerspace, there are going to be a lot of things that need electronic power, but we've got to find a way to manage those cords. And that's something that we can easily do through cord management and finding devices and especially furniture that has access to electricity. That's something we do at First Makerspace. The second thing is there's food and drink in the workspace. That's simply not safe. First, it could spill on the electronics, and second, students are not the best at cleaning up their food, which could lead to pests, ants, and more. The third thing is it's disorganized. That's pretty obvious. You need systems as an educator to keep student work organized, both projects and so that students can move in and flow from one group to the next. These are important systems that you'll have to teach your students to both help them stay organized and create a sane lab space for yourself. The third thing is that there are no labels. In any type of makerspace, you're going to need to label things, not only for young students, but for older students as well, to enable them to put things away on their own without your assistance. And the fourth is there are no cleaning materials in the space. Especially in this day and age with COVID-19, we need to make sure that we have a way to make sure that items, workspaces are able to be cleanly and maintain a cleanly environment. So this is an example of a very clean, not only clean, but a safe makerspace. This is the ACE Makerspace at the University of Indianapolis. And this is a space that First Makerspace designed. And it's actually set up in this picture for a workshop. And so it's not set up, this was not a picture taken for our catalog or anything like that. This is something that shows a use in progress, which is something that I really wanted to show. So it's a couple of the things that I want to point out in this picture are that the tools are organized. There's a way to organize the tools on that mobile maker tool cart. And in the mobile maker storage cart, which is that colorful cart, right here, you have all of your items in bins that you could easily add labels to if you wanted. The next thing is that there are cords, but that they are managed, and that they, like the cords for the 3D printers run behind the tables, and that they are put in a place where that they can be managed. The other thing I want to point out is that all projects have a place. And so in the milk crates, those are designed for not only item storage, but also project storage as classes. And this is a university. And so as college students go from class to class, they can store their projects in here if they can't take it with them. Another example, this is a high school, is the Monitor Makerspace at Mount Vernon High School. This is obviously also a makerspace in use. So a couple of things I want to point out here that is different from some of the other spaces that we've looked at. They have electricity hanging from the ceiling to manage their cords. These tables are our mobile maker storage our mobile maker tables with mess management. They have outlets in the middle, which is great. But these extension reels connect to the table so that you don't have cords on the table, so there are no tripping hazards, which is important. The next thing is that there's signage. We're going to come back to visuals in a little bit, but there's signage clearly posted by the 3D printers. And there's another area back over to the left that you can't really see in this picture, but the tool area where the laser cutter has black and yellow stripes to indicate that it's a tool work zone, which is another important feature. And right by the door, there's another visual that has any safety phone numbers on it, and important emergency contacts, which is another essential thing. So the next category is to really understand the risks and precautions. And there's four major things to remember as part of this. The first is to require protective gear. In most maker spaces, that's going to look like safety glasses for certain projects. You won't need them for every project, but safety glasses, whenever you're working with tools, is a good idea. And that also means wearing appropriate clothing. If you're going to be working with woodworking tools, like saws, drills, lathes, you're going to want to require students to wear closed-toed shoes and pants, and that you're going to require them to tie back their long hair and remove dangling jewelry. If you're simply working with hand tools, you may not require these. It just kind of depends on what tools you're using to what requirements you put in place. The next is to prepare. Never leave students alone in the makerspace, just like you never leave students alone in your classroom. You also may consider requiring students to be trained or badged before using specialty tools or equipment. This is mostly for large tools like the 3D printer or laser cutter, not small tools or small pieces of I don't want to say equipment, but small things like Kiva blocks or make do, those are completely safe and students don't really need to be trained before they use those. But anything that's really considered a piece of equipment, you may consider doing training for before students can use them. And then the third is to just use tools correctly. Enforcement is another important piece. It's important to keep students engaged during the learning activity, which is really easy to do in a makerspace. But this is where engagement comes into play. It's important not to let students horse around for the safety of everyone. And if students are not acting appropriately, it's important to take action according to whatever your school's policies are to make sure that everyone knows that that kind of behavior will not be tolerated. The next is to organize, to label tools and materials so that you don't have drawers of tools loose, and this will also help maintain a safe working space for everyone. This book, The Safer Makerspaces, Fab Labs, and STEM Labs, A Collaborative Guide, is a wonderful book. It's written by Dr. Kenneth Roy and Dr. Tyler Love, who are actually often give testimony in cases that are brought up about safety where the school system may be negligent. They wrote this book as a preventative measure to help schools figure out what they can do to be safer spaces for students to work. It includes all kinds of things, including how to make spaces safer, potential layouts, everything from not only maker spaces, but also science labs, STEM labs, floor plans. We sell this book for $50, same price as it is on the ITEEA website, which is the professional organization for engineering and technology teachers. Um, and and it's absolutely a must read if you're an administrator or someone who's going to be running and managing a makerspace. And so if you'd like more information about that book, please contact us. The next piece is to understand safety as a community. Safety is really everyone's business, and it's everyone's duty to uphold this, not just the maker manager, but also teachers in the space, administrators, everyone who's going to be using the space. And if you're the maker manager, it's important that you uphold safety as an important pillar of your makerspace. And that means that you model it. As the facilitator, it's important that you're going to model safety practices and that you wear safety glasses too, or that you follow whatever practices you set. It's also important that you create rules that make sense for your space. If you don't have large tools or equipment, you don't need to use a badging policy. But it's also important that you think through whatever potential hazards you have and just create policies that make sense for that. And so to get started, you may consider just walking through your space or your classroom and jotting down anything that you see that you think may be a risk for students, and then brainstorming ways that you can address that. The next is to enforce your safety rules. Whatever your rules are, you want to make sure that you enforce those in a way that makes sense for students to keep them safe. And that may be through creating a safety contract to make sure that they are aware of whatever rules that you set, and as well as visuals to remind them as well. You also want to create systems for students to clean up and organize. And so whenever, like for example, whenever you have 5 minutes left during the day, everyone cleans up. And that's something that you don't even need to remind them to do, but that's something that they always are going to clean up the makerspace, put their projects back, and label them in a specific place. And that may be a system that you create. Whatever works for you in your classroom, STEM lab, or makerspace, that's what you want to set up. And next is to provide concrete examples of why safety matters. The timeless example of Carol didn't want to wear her safety glasses and now she doesn't need them poster is a great example. Safety does matter. And so giving students examples of why it matters is a great way to start. Using visuals is another great way to remind students of why it's important to be safe. Signs with safety reminders, as well as visual pictures of where things go, can help students identify what is expected of them. This is especially important for students with ADHD, as sometimes they may not understand what the expectations are, especially younger students. And so if you have an area that is organized, it's a great idea to take a picture of what you expect it to look like to maintain organization. It's also a great idea to label tools and equipment, not only for organization, but also because students may not know the names of specific pieces of tools and equipment, and this can help them to learn the names of those pieces. This is a picture of a label for obviously a high hazard vertical bandsaw, and this may be obviously not something you have in your makerspace if you're an elementary educator, but this is just an example provided by the MIT Makerspace, and these are things that we can provide more examples of upon request. The last thing I wanted to point out was the Maker Ed micro-credential. This is available through Digital Promise, and if you click the link, there's more information. You can earn graduate credit by completing this micro-credential, and if you are running a makerspace, this is something that would add a lot of value to what you're currently doing and expand on what we're talking about here. So if you, for those of you doing the coding, crafting, and circuitry course, the next step is to create a safety poster to really think through what we've learned today, or create a safety contract for your classroom or makerspace. And then upload your poster or contract to Dream See Do. Thank you for joining me today, and have a